All right. Let's see. Are we live? Looks like we're live. Fantastic. Hello and welcome to the Creative Control Room podcast pre-show. This is the part of the show where we make sure all systems are go. So I'm going to be going around the room here, making sure that we are live wherever we need to be live, and that all audio and video and lighting and everything is good to go. So got to double check. Twitch is up. All right. Got to double check this week. Make sure that audio is running. It looks like it is. Messed that up. I think it was last week. Someone caught that for me. Thank you very much. Facebook and Twitter are live. Fantastic. We've got our camera angles. Camera 2. Camera 3. Awesome. Back to camera 1. Sound effects. Oh, you know what? I just noticed. I've got an Italian Mastiff, Cane Corso, and he slobbers everywhere, and I just noticed a big old thing of slime on one of my sound effects buttons. This one, in fact. Fitting. But yeah, whenever he shakes his jowls, spit just goes flying everywhere. Let's see. Looks like our animations are working good. Let's see. Cameras, lights are all on. Fantastic. I think we're good to go. And I've got some really good information today. Today is Sunday, August the 15th. So let's just go ahead and get into this one, which is episode number 88. All right. Okay. Hello and welcome to episode number 88 of the Creative Control Room podcast, a show for creators, makers, and doers. And my goal is to help you make to the max. I'm your operator, Ryan Hafey, and in this episode, I'm going to tell you about 3 settings that you need to enable in OBS right now for better streams and better recordings. Let's roll that official, unofficial intro. Here we go. My favorite part of the show, even though that's not the official intro, and I'm still working on it, but we'll get there. Hello and welcome to the Creative Control Room podcast. Thank you for being here. Man, it was a busy week. Before we get into that, if you are new here, my name is Ryan Hafey, and this is my Creative Control Room. This is where I share all the things that I know when it comes to video creation, photography, podcasting, live streaming, FPV occasionally, all that kind of fun stuff. If you're into any of that stuff, then you may enjoy this podcast. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button wherever you happen to be watching or listening, and follow me on social media at Ryan Hafey on Instagram and Twitter, and also on TikTok. I'm posting, or at least I'm trying to post a little bit more there as we go. So yeah, hit me up there, and feel free to send me a message when this is all done. So yeah, it's been such a busy week. Got big fights coming up. Obviously the big fight it'll be this upcoming Saturday. Which was supposed to be Errol Spence Jr. versus Errol Spence Jr. has changed. It's now Pacquiao. Did I say Pacquiao? Manny Pacquiao versus Errol Spence Jr. has changed. Now it is Manny Pacquiao versus Yordenis Ugas. Errol Spence had an eye injury that needed to be fixed right away. So Yordenis Ugas, who is already fighting on the card, is stepping in. And that's, it's still going to be a good fight. But as far as the back end stuff, it sure created a lot of extra work as far as what needed to be changed and updated and all that. It's all good, but that's what happened there. So I've been doing a lot of that. Got to eat some sushi yesterday for the first time in a while. Sushi used to be like a once a week thing, but just been so busy lately, haven't had a chance to get out and get sushi. And sushi's one of those weird things where, every time I go, it's always all you can eat, because you got to eat all you can eat. It takes practice when you're eating sushi to know where your limit is, and it's very easy to think that you have room left over, but then still order that extra roll, and then by the time you're done with that, you can barely stand up. And it had been a little while since we had gone and had sushi, so when we had sushi the other day, I had forgotten where my tolerance level was, and definitely surpassed that. It was a little disappointing because I'd done really well eating very, very healthy all week. I've been getting into this kind of 2 meal a day thing that's been helping me kind of keep my calories down, helping me save a little time, but also just kind of working with my schedule and working with my appetite, I think. So got my sushi fix out of the way so we can move on. Anyway, this show's not about sushi. The show is about content creation and creativity and all that kind of fun stuff. So today is also a busy day. So we're going to go through some of this stuff relatively quickly, but I still have some very good information to share with you all. The first thing that I wanted to talk about today is in regards to a video that I saw during the week in relation to audio. So if you are someone who, whether you could make music videos, you could be a vlogger, any instance where you're creating video content that includes any kind of dialogue and also music beneath it, this could be very helpful for you. Now, this video or this tip here comes from a video from creator Olufemi. Actually, he brought in someone, a guy named Dave, so he kind of intros the video, but then his buddy Dave talks about the tip. So I'm not going to get too much into the weeds as far as what the tip actually is, because it's kind of the bulk of the video and I don't want to take away from it. But the name of the video, and there's a link in the description, the name of the video is Sound Better with Music Under Your Voice. And this is what that video looks like if you want to take a look. If you don't follow Olufemi, you should. He's got a lot of good info there. Anywho, so I'll close that. The bulk or the main part, here's what the video is saying. So what a lot of us will do, and what I have done basically up until now, when it comes to editing music under, whether it's a vlog or whether it's a piece of content I'm making, what most people would do is just duck down the music so that you can hear more of the dialogue, more of what people are saying. So they'll just reduce the volume when you're talking, and then they'll raise it back up when there's no talking. The problem with that is that doesn't take into consideration frequencies. So, there are certain frequencies in dialogue, there are certain frequencies in music. And even if you reduce the volume in the music, those frequencies, there could be similar frequencies within that music that also exist within the dialogue. So in that case, some of those can kind of clash, and it can sound a little bit too busy. It can sound like sounds are kind of competing, and frequencies are competing within, the music and the dialogue. So what the video suggests is using, typically what, professional producers will do is use, and I forget the term that he used for it, but there's specific ways where they can remove some of the dialogue frequencies from the music beneath it so that the music and the dialogue can blend a little bit better. Now, Premiere Pro, so this is most specifically going to be for users, for Premiere Pro users, but those particular audio effects aren't present by default within Premiere Pro, but Dave in this video highlights an effect that you can use to kind of work around that. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's basically using the de-esser plugin or the de-esser effect. So what it is what you would do is you would apply a de-esser effect to a clip of dialogue, and within that you would kind of isolate the main bulk of the frequencies from your dialogue. So you'll see, kind of a graph showing where most of the frequencies are taking place. In the de-esser effect, you would then isolate where the main frequencies are for your dialogue, and then you would basically remove that effect from the dialogue clip and then apply it to the music beneath it. And what that will do is remove those frequencies from the music so that they're not competing with those same frequencies from the dialogue audio. And it's a little bit more complex, not really complex, but there's a little bit more to it than that. And Dave from that video really explains it much better than I could. But I've tried it on a couple things, and it's pretty effective. So if you use Premiere, I would suggest go taking a look at that video and listening to those tips. He also mentions you can also do a similar thing with parametric equalizer. The de-esser, at least in my opinion, seemed to be the more easy solution of the two. But I thought that was really cool. I didn't realize that I had been doing it wrong the whole time. So I'm going to start implementing that more often. Again, the link to that description is in the link to that video is in the description below. I highly recommend that you go check it out. So I wanted to touch on that briefly. And then I want to get into OBS. So the title of this episode is 3 settings that you should be enabling in OBS as soon as possible, ASAP. So 2 of these, I'll get to that in a second. Let's back up. So one of the issues that I've been dealing with in regards to OBS for quite a while now has been, right now it's looking really good, and I think I've dialed it in, but I've noticed that even having upgraded my GPU, even having a fully competent PC system to handle all the load and all the inputs, I was still missing some frames. So if I would move my hand across the screen like this, you would start to notice that it almost looked like it was skipping frames, almost as if I was using conflicting frame rates. Maybe something was set to 24 frames per second when something else was set to 30. But that wasn't the case. And I've troubleshooted this for, I don't know, basically as long as I've been doing this. And it's kind of intermittent, but I could never figure out what exactly was causing the issues. I did all sorts of troubleshooting. I was like, okay, well, is it a bitrate issue within OBS? Do I have my bitrate set too high? Well, it's not that, because that doesn't really kick in until you start recording. Keep in mind, all of these, this whole issue where it looked like it was skipping frames, I would notice it even before I would do any recording or streaming. So it wasn't the fact, it wouldn't have been within my recording settings or my streaming settings, because it was happening just, I would turn on my cameras, open up OBS, and I would see it there before doing anything else in OBS. And again, it would just kind of look like my hand was sort of skipping across the screen instead of being nice and fluid. And today, thank God, by the grace of God, everything looks smooth today, so I can prove my point. But, so I stumbled upon a video by Epos Vox, who I've followed for a while, but he's got tons of great videos on OBS and live streaming and all that kind of stuff. He posted a video the other day with, I believe, 7 tips for, let's see what it was called. I've got this one loaded up here as well. Here you go. So this is what his video is. 7 OBS settings you need to check ASAP. Oh, I didn't realize how closely I resembled his title for this episode. Sorry about that. So I'm going to highlight two tips from his video, and then I'll leave you to go watch the remaining steps from his video, again, because there's lots of good information in there. But definitely, if you're not subscribed, Epos Vox, go check him out. Link in the description below. So anyway, prior to that video, let me go back here. So first of all, I actually reached out to Epos Vox on Twitter and mentioned the issue that I was having. And he offered, he gave me one tip around running OBS as an administrator. Turns out that wasn't the issue. Someone else actually chimed in and said, and shout out to Twitter user Eddie04TV, who suggested this one, which was try changing the HDMI settings on your Sony cameras to output 1080i versus 1080p. His take being that, for whatever reason, 1080p is causes the issue as it goes through the encoder, something like that along the way. I'm not exactly sure. I did that for all 3 cameras, and it seemed to help a little bit. I didn't do enough testing to really ensure that corrected the problem. But between that setting, so if you are using Sony for your live streams, I would suggest doing that, because it definitely didn't get worse. If anything, it definitely got better. It didn't hurt picture quality from what I could tell. So I would go in, if you're using Sony, go to your HDMI output settings, and there's an option in there where you can go in and change how that signal is outputted, either 1080p, 1080i, and then I think there's an auto setting or something. Just make sure you're selecting 1080i, step number 1. Step number 2 is, and this is where things changed for me, this is where the issue really started to resolve itself a little bit more. So I'm going to bring OBS over here. Now keep in mind, you're going to get the crazy mirrored, or mirror infinity mirror effect here when I open up the screen here. So if we go into our settings, no, I'm sorry. If we go into our sources down here at the bottom, let me see if I can bring this up. There we go. We go into our sources and we find our video capture source, which is the source that's bringing in our Sony, our Sony camera feed. We're going to right click and we're going to go to properties. And you know what? I could probably do this here. Let's see. I hope this looks, there we go. And then up here, I stumbled upon this buffering setting. Now, by default, this setting is set to auto detect. Now, again, what I mentioned before is that the stuttering was intermittent, meaning sometimes I would turn on OBS and I would wave my hand around and it would look great. Sometimes I would turn on OBS and it would stutter. There would be other times when I would turn OBS on, and I would shut it, turn it back on, turn it off, turn it back on, and after a few times it would seem to go away. But then inevitably that stuttering came back in. So with this buffering, right here in the description, when enabled, it buffers video and audio data to ensure the smoothest and most accurate playback possible, but at the cost of increased latency. I'm not too worried about latency for what I do. But for me, it was set to auto detect, which could possibly explain why the issue for me was intermittent. I say that word all the time, but I keep messing it up. But that would explain why sometimes it would do it and sometimes it wouldn't, I guess. It might think that it needs to be enabled at sometimes and other times it wouldn't, and that would cause the stuttering. I don't know. But I just went ahead and enabled buffering. And since then, I really haven't had any issues. Testing this out also on another podcast setup that uses a similar setup to what I have here with even less good computer specs that I have, and the results are very similar. So this has a lot of promise for me. So if you're experiencing that same thing where you notice that your video coming in, if you're using a webcam or Sony cameras or whatever it may be, if it's not that smooth, try going in and making sure that buffering is enabled within the properties of your video capture source there, and that could help you out. So that was one of the 3 settings in OBS that I wanted to highlight. I'm going to get out of that there. Open that. Okay, good. So moving on then, and then these last 2 settings came from the video from ePlusVox, and these aren't related to the stuttering, but they are 2 settings that, at least for me, I thought were very important, and so I activated them immediately, and I think they might help you as well. The first one has to do with recording, your recording settings. So I'm going to go back here into this crazy infinity mirror effect. Now, if we go into our settings here, open this up, I might have to zoom in up here again. Let's see. All right. So if we go into our settings and go to output, we're going to go to recording. Now, obviously, some of these are grayed out because I'm currently recording, but typically speaking, or at least prior to this, I was recording in an MP4 format. And you get a little warning that pops up when you change it to MP4 that says, if the video, if OBS crashes or whatever, you lose the whole video. If the video is not finalized, then you could lose all of that, everything that you've recorded so far. MKV tends to resolve that and doesn't have that issue. The problem with MKV is it's not a very well-known, it's not a very friendly video format in that, you couldn't just send someone an MKV file and they would be able to easily play it. It requires certain codecs and things like that. So OBS has an option where you can remux MKV files. So the workaround for that built into OBS is you can record an MKV, which is the safest way to record. And then after the recording, you can go in and remux that MKV file, which essentially just converts it into an MP4, or I believe you can also do it as an MOV if you wanted to. But MP4 is usually fine for most people. So I've decided to go back to MKV for that extra layer of protection just to make sure that there are no issues. But the setting that I'm referring to that I think everyone needs to go in and activate is because by default, if you set it to MKV, it's just going to save an MKV file, and then you have to go in and manually remux that within settings after you've finished recording. However, if on the settings tab, you go over here to advanced settings on the left, and if you scroll down, let's see, there we go. Under the recording section here, there's an option to automatically remux to MP4. So this really more than anything is just a convenience thing so that when you're done recording, it will automatically convert it for you versus having to go through that extra step of doing it yourself. But when you select this, as soon as you're done recording, it's just going to switch it over to an MP4 for you anyway, and it'll actually retain both files. So it'll keep the MKV and the MP4 file in the same file location if that's where you want it. And there you go. Problem solved. So activate that just to keep it, keep yourself safe, make sure you're not losing any data, and just for convenience, really. And the other setting is, and I can actually get out of this now. Oh, there we go. Put this back over here. The other setting has to do with running OBS on, when you first run OBS. So one of the things that happens with OBS, especially, and this one is important to you if you run OBS in conjunction with a lot of other things, or maybe if you're a gaming streamer and you find that you have issues within OBS when you're trying to stream a game, maybe your game frame rate shuts down, or maybe you get a lot of missed frames within OBS. When you start OBS, typically speaking, games and things like that will take priority as far as, processing power from your PC. So, different programs are kind of ranked in terms of priority when you're loading them. And if you've got a lot of things going, or if you're running a game or a program that's very system intensive, OBS is going to kind of get a lot of the leftovers, and therefore you could run into some performance issues. So, one of the ways to combat that and to make it a higher priority for your system is to run OBS as an administrator. Now, you could go in here, and I've got an OBS icon at the top. And if you right click, you could as easily just click run as administrator, and you'd be good to go. But that is an extra step that you have to do whenever you open OBS. So instead of doing that, what you can do is right click on the OBS icon at the bottom here, which is cut off on the screen, but in the menu there is properties. When you click on properties, it will bring you to this screen here. And all you need to do is go to compatibility and select run this program as an administrator. And in doing so, every time you open OBS, it will automatically prompt you to run it as an administrator. You still get the little pop-up that says, would you like to run this as administrator? And you click yes. But again, it's more of a convenience thing. Let's say, you forget to run it as an administrator, then you notice midstream that you're running into some performance issues. This will prevent that. This will ensure that every time you open OBS, you have to run it as an administrator, and that could help you out. So those, so once again, first of all, enable buffering within your video capture device properties within OBS to ensure that you get smooth frame rates and smooth playback. Go in and select the Auto-Remux to MP4 feature within advanced settings in OBS, and also make sure that you were recording at MKV in an MKV format so that you don't lose any data should OBS crash or whatever it may be. And finally, right-click on the OBS icon on your desktop. If you don't have an OBS icon on your desktop, you can also do it within, if you let's say, for example, keep the OBS icon in your system tray, which I typically do. You can also right-click on that and do it the same way there. But just make sure you go in there, right-click, go to Properties, Compatibility, and then run this program as an administrator, and that will ensure that every time you open OBS, you will be running it as an administrator. So there we go. Those are my 3 OBS tips. OBS is an interesting program, and there's so much that you can do with it, and there are so many different settings. And I think because it's open source, you kind of rely on just sort of random people on the internet, their experiences with OBS, and it's a little bit harder to get, direct from the source information as far as how OBS works or, what settings would be best for certain scenarios. So in my experience, it's a little bit harder to find good information on OBS. So if you're using OBS and you're experiencing issues, I don't think you're alone. I think it just takes a little bit more time to really play around with it, really kind of troubleshoot some of your own problems, test with different settings, and figure out what works best for your particular system and setup. So I think I want to do some more OBS content going forward. I think there's still a lot more to unpack within that. I've definitely updated and changed a lot of the settings that I had previously recommended. So it might be a good idea to go through and just kind of do an overview of where my settings are now. So if that's of interest to any of you, let me know if you have any specific questions in regards to OBS or some of its different features or certain ways to accomplish things within OBS for your particular use case. Let me know, leave a comment, and I'll do what I can to see if I can help you figure that out. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and call this one done. If you did find some value in what I had to say today, it would be awesome if you would hit that subscribe button wherever you happen to be watching or listening. Also, follow me on social media at Ryan Hayfield on Instagram and Twitter. Feel free to swing by after the show, ask me a question, or say hello. That rhymed. And it's all good, So keep on creating, making, and doing. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.